What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Royale, a confused edition, where thank God again that we are not streaming live, because I didn't have anything loaded. I wasn't sure what we were doing exactly, so we're here 10 minutes late, but you don't know that,
It worked out fine.
except for the fact that I just told you that. So
It worked out fine.
yeah.
This is Cinema Royale. I am Travis Hobson, and it's John Nolan. We are the Punch Drunk Critics.
That we are.
Check out our website every day at punchdrunkcritics.com for reviews and the news that we deem worthy of posting about. So this week's show is going to be a little bit shorter. We only got a couple things to talk about. We're going to focus a little bit on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Huge episode that went down this week. Crazy episode.
A centerfold image. If it was a comic book, it would be a classic panel that people would be posting forever.
Iconic image at the end of this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Also going to talk a little bit about what we just learned about the next episode that's coming out. So we're going to talk about that as well. So a couple of movies this week. Voyagers, which is a sci-fi film with Colin Farrell and a great young cast. Ty Sheridan, Lily Rose Depp, Isaac Hempstead Wright, Fionn Whitehead. She's great. She's great. Chantel, whatever her name is, can't remember from Roxanne. Shantae Davis. Really Contessa Sundell from the upcoming Black Adam movie. A lot of great actors in that film. Directed by Neil Berger, a veteran director. And also, we're going to talk about ThunderForce. At least John's going to talk about ThunderForce with Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer. The superhero movie that's on Netflix.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of stuff. Not a lot of stuff to talk about, but a few things. It's Wrestlemania weekend, so I was up all last night watching that 4-hour show, which got rain delayed, which is really funny.
What's their attendance looking like this year? Because obviously they can probably have better than the zero attendance last year.
This is the first live show that they've done with attendance.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's like last March or April.
And where is it?
It's in Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
And the stadium was a big open air stadium, and it was cloudy and thunderstorms, and it rained, and it delayed the show by about 30-40 minutes, and stuff was wet throughout the show.
That's the trouble with Central Florida, and especially this time of year. Was it Raymond James Stadium, or are they somewhere else?
Yeah, that's where they were. And they had a really nice crowd too, pretty decent sized crowd, really big crowd.
Yeah. I mean, WrestleMania pulls from across the country anyway, and then when you have the first major event people can attend, I'll be honest now with everybody I know, at least in my local circle, vaccinated at this point. We actually ventured out to it wasn't as fun as WrestleMania, but we went to a friend's kid's birthday party yesterday, and
it's not quite WrestleMania.
Yeah, not quite, but I'll be honest with you. I'm just relating to these people at WrestleMania. I didn't expect it to be a revelation. I didn't expect it to be emotional, and it wasn't. I wasn't weeping in the corner by any means, but it was strange to be back in a group of people without masks around. Everybody's still kind of keeping their distance and playing it safe. It'll take a while for that to wear off, but it was a relief that I didn't expect, because I'm not. Not to say I'm cooler than ice, but I don't think about this stuff as much as I should, so it doesn't usually affect me as much as it does other people. But it was so I can imagine, hopefully, some wrestling fans are known to not have the sense. I know it's a small percentage, but I'm just worried about the guy from Alabama coming in that's going to super spread the event, but we'll see what happens.
At least it was open air, so that makes it a little.
It's a huge difference.
I actually like that decision. It's just an unfortunate thing about the weather. It happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing that it happened on WrestleMania night. I mean, they got another show tonight. The second part of WrestleMania is tonight. So we'll see if the weather cooperates.
Are you a fan of the open air wrestling? Because I know that was always the coolest. I remember I was real big in the Attitude Era, and I remember when one WrestleMania they had a ring set up outside the stadium for stuff before, and then one of the early WrestleManias was outside. There's just something cool about outdoor wrestling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love outdoor wrestling, and they don't do it nearly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Especially during the months where you're not expecting weather like this.
Right.
A place where the weather can be unpredictable like this.
To at least.
I love open air wrestling. One of the greatest matches I ever saw was Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, and Minoru Suzuki in Japan, and it was raining outside, and it's like these two fierce warriors battling in the sideways rain. It's just like
Nah.
some images that came out of it are just like insane. They're so beautiful.
That's amazing.
I love it. I love open air wrestling.
Immediately, I went to Last Boy Scout when you said that, and just imagine that football game in the beginning, but with wrestling.
We should make Plus Drunk Critics. We should do we should become like Bleeding Cool. We should be like covering movies and TV and wrestling the way they do.
Yeah, or what culture? Our friends from over the pond. They actually had a really cool article the other day. I meant to send it over to you, where they did the top 10 matches without attendance. Because again, I've actually meant to get
the pandemic era is coming to a close, and it's about time to start looking at that stuff. There've been some. Look, I'll be honest. I think the pandemic, we're turning into Wrestle Chat here, which is fine with me, considering I grew up on wrestling when other kids grew up on Sesame Street.
Yeah. So your dad was a big wrestling fan? Is that what your genesis of it is?
My uncle.
Your uncle? Okay.
My uncle. You got me started on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're coming to the end, and I would say that the pandemic era was wildly successful in terms of creative for most wrestling companies, because they could operate without having to worry about whether or not somebody was going to get booed or cheered.
Yeah.
So they were able
freedom.
There was a certain freedom to it that they didn't have before, and now I'm very curious to see how they're going to play it now with crowds starting to come back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guys that they were pushing over during the crowdless era, they can't get that same reaction when there are crowds there.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see. So
yeah. Or some guys that may not have been received well in the first place, but have won people over since then, that are now getting a shot that they wouldn't have ever expected to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very curious. But yeah, night 2 of WrestleMania is tonight. So yeah, I'm gonna
nice.
Get a nice nap in.
Is it still like a $60 pay-per-view? And we'll get off wrestling in a minute. I just always find this curious. I've been wanting to get back and watch wrestling a long time. It just never happens.
I think they are still about $50-$60. But if you had WWE Network, you weren't paying for it anyway. You were just paying for the network.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I haven't paid for a pay-per-view in years, because I had WWE Network. You paid that $9.95 a month for the entire network. You get the pay-per-views for free.
Oh, that's a deal and a half. I remember SummerSlam being like $50, WrestleMania being like $75, and this was back in the day when you had to go to the cable company and get the little cylinder that you scrolled into your cable to watch something on pay-per-view.
Yeah, but now WWE Network has entirely moved over to Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're on Peacock, and Peacock is only $5 a month. So you don't even
with ads though, right?
Yeah, but it's still just $5.
Yeah.
So it's $5. And so you're paying half of what you used to pay for the full WWE Network.
I'm amazed they didn't turn that as an add-on. That seems to me like it would be an ad. Like Hulu's famous for that. They've got 14 different add-ons you can do.
Yeah.
And honestly, it is cable creeping back into streaming.
Peacock is ridiculously cheap anyway. Mm-hmm. And they have a free version of Peacock that has a lot of their content on it already.
Yeah.
So Peacock, they're practically giving it away. And then you add they don't have all of the programming that WWE Network had originally. Like there's still some, like the old library of content that they had. The decades of content has not fully moved over to Peacock yet, but eventually it will. But for right now, it's just $5 a month. So
right,
you're getting WrestleMania for $5. I mean, yeah, you
can't beat that. No, not at all. So
one of these days, I'm going to go to WrestleMania. Like I've never been there.
That surprises me.
2 years ago, I went to the city where WrestleMania was, because the thing about WrestleMania is, or at least in the crowd era of WrestleMania, the city becomes a wrestling hub.
Mm-hmm.
Where wrestling is, there's wrestling from all parts of the world converge on that city where WrestleMania is, and they put on shows the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily even have to go to WrestleMania to have like an amazing time enjoying wrestling. So I went to like a New Japan Ring of Honor crossover show that was just incredible.
Wow.
And then I went to like this. I probably told you about the midnight show I went to that WrestleMania weekend in New York.
Yeah. No, I do remember you. You went to a couple, I thought.
The one that began with a sacrifice and ended on a murder. It was just this crazy hardcore show.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Oh man! All right, let's talk movies, man. We're talking about wrestling. I'm going to say saying. I wanted to just turn the site into a wrestling/movie site, and I can get my indulgence of wrestling in there too.
Hey, it's as far as I'm concerned, we're an entertainment site. So whatever we throw in there, the better. But
We can have that conversation.
Yeah.
We can have that conversation about maybe what the channel evolves into.
One thing we didn't have to pay $5 for, that you could have watched for free this weekend, was Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer's new superhero movie, ThunderForce. Which now you didn't get a chance to see ThunderForce, right?
No, they sent me a screener. I never got around to it. I'm gonna watch it at some point, but I've been reluctant. Reviews have been not great, and it's directed by her husband Ben Falcone, and they've never done a good movie together.
Yeah, well,
That's Falcone have never made a good movie together. Period. And they just did one. They just did Super Intelligence a few months ago,
yep,
and Super
yeah.
Intelligence wasn't good either. I don't know what it is about them together that they can't make a good movie, but I need to see it for myself before I fully make that judgment.
Well, you see this in a lot of couples where you want to be nice to each other, so you don't tell each other when something's bad. I would guess that has something to do with it. But before, just as a preface to this, head over to punchdrunkcritics.com and look for Cortland's review of ThunderForce. It's much more insightful than anything I'll give, and much more in depth. Now, I'm always okay with these kinds. This movie was fine. I mean, it was just as funny as any other Melissa McCarthy movie. I've never been her biggest fan. It has nothing to do with her being a woman or being, a plus size woman or anything like that. I just her voice kind of annoys me a little bit. That's the only way I can put it. Octavia Spencer I've always loved, and she's hit or miss with me when she's doing comedy. Now she does play the straight man in this odd couple duo where she's the brilliant scientist and Melissa McCarthy plays, shocker, the dumb friend who comes in and messes some things up, and then they become the ThunderForce.
How did they get their powers?
Well, because Octavia Spencer is a scientist, and Melissa McCarthy makes a mistake in the lab, and guess what? Now she's got powers, so then they all get powers, and then they're fighting. What's the dude? I always forget his name, and he's in frickin' everything. He's married to Rose Byrne, I think. Got a really cool name. What the hell is his name? Hold on. Yes, Bobby Cannavale. Yeah. I always thought it was Bobby Carnival for a long time, but Anyway, so
he's a super intelligence also.
Well, all these movies seem to have a similar. Any movies like this, they have similar casts. There's like a pot of 30 people that they pull from every time. And it's just...
I mean, that's what happens when you get people who make a lot of movies together. They bring in the same...
Yeah.
They bring in their friends. And Bobby Cannavale is clearly a friend of Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone, which is fine. Bobby Cannavale is a tremendous actor. So there's nothing wrong with that.
I've never been against that. People always shit on Adam Sandler for that. And a lot of times people working together, chemistry is a big thing in casts. So if you've got a group of friends that works well together, bring them in. Just make sure it's not for a vacation, or do. I mean, if you're going to put it on Netflix where we don't have to pay for it, that's fine. But anyway, so the movie's very predictable. It's very... I wish I could find another way to put it, but it's exactly what you think it's going to be. It's Melissa McCarthy being the doofy friend that means very well, Octavia Spencer being the successful friend that's trying to, support her friend and also go on with her life and do what's right. And in the midst of all that, you have them becoming superheroes. It's like a girls' trip, or is it Girls Trip? Yeah, a Girls Trip, or any one of those shows where you have the group of friends it's a group of friends or one friend where one's successful, and then you have the one friend from high school or childhood that's not. It's that exact dynamic. It runs that predictably throughout. McCarthy's... If you like Melissa McCarthy, I think you'll probably like the movie fine. My wife usually loves these movies. She got about 5/6 of the way through it, and she said, "Oh, I just laughed finally." And I tell you right now, my Angela is very lax on movies like this. She likes pretty much every movie that's out there. She doesn't have a bad thing to say. So take that for what you will. But she's not.
How is this movie in the way it presents plus size superheroes.
Are you just trying to put me in a place where I say something fucked up and I don't mean to?
No, I think that's actually kind of the point of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why this movie exists in a way is not just to be funny, but to present plus size superheroes because we've never seen that on the big screen.
It does, but
how is it in terms of presenting that?
Well, first I'll say if you want information on that respect,
if I wanted to set you up, I would say Melissa McCarthy or Millie Bobby Brown. That's what I would say to you. There's
Melissa McCarthy because the other one's not legal, or somebody I'm interested in. Jesus Christ, this is going to be a thing, isn't it?
This is what I said. This is what I'm saying. If I wanted to get you, if I wanted to mess with you, that's what I would say. I was asking a real question.
No, like I said at the beginning of this, if you want the insightful take on this movie, head over to our website, punchdrunkcritics.com, and check out Cortland's review.
And she does tackle it from the perspective of, kind of a plus-size person watching superheroes with plus-size women. So she's taking it from that perspective.
So the thing I can't determine, maybe this is saying that they didn't treat it well, or maybe this is saying I just don't understand, is Melissa McCarthy's comedy to me has always been like, I am sure that she would still be funny because she's creative and she's clever, but her comedy has always been circling around the fact that she's a plus-size woman, and that doesn't change in this movie. I mean, there's things like she puts her suit on and she can't get out of the car right, and then there's all these little jokes like this and that where they're almost poking fun at the plus-size.
Physical comedy is her strength.
Yeah, but physical comedy centering around her weight, it seems. Or at least I thought. I could be wrong. Again, I
think there's definitely some dancing around that issue that she toys with on purpose.
Yeah, and that's use what you got to your advantage. I have no problem with that, but I don't think this is going to be. It seems more the simple fact that it's a comedy and not a more serious take on superheroes lends the fact to me that it's not trying to give plus size people a superhero to look up to. You know what I mean? It's not like Black Panther coming out for young African American men to see. That's not what this is at all. It plays a lot of fun at it. You really get strong ties about friendship and what matters is on the inside type stuff. But as far as putting plus size superheroes in a good light or showing what that experience is, I think it's more stereotypical than anything else.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. This has been your white guy moment from punchdrunkcritics.com.
Your skinny white guy moment.
Your skinny white guy moment. There you go. Forgot that part. Skinny white male white. No, I said white guy, so that makes whatever.
Not so skinny. Not so skinny anymore.
What's that?
Not so skinny anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is going to get awkward. Now I'm going to start crying on the middle of the camera. Hey, I grew up a very large young man, so I still have dysmorphia issues from that.
I've seen our old pictures.
Yeah, well, when I was in my 20s, I was a little bit better shape. I should really, I won't because I know what you'll do. You'll take it and use it as the thumbnail for every show. Sure. But if you saw any of my school pictures from like 5th to 9th grade, you know I might know what I'm talking about when I cover this. But the other big movie that came out this week is a movie that I one of the things I really hate doing is parroting what everybody else is saying about a movie. I like to try and find something unique, but Voyagers with Colin Farrell is being described by everybody that talks about it, everything as Lord of the Flies in space. Even the filmmaker himself described it that way.
In my headline.
And there's a reason for that. It's the only way that you can. It's literally what it is. There's no other way to describe this film.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not. I don't think it's trying to hide that either, and I actually think that's one reason I like it. Is that it's not trying to hide that.
Yeah, I don't think it's trying to hide it, but it's also. I don't know. You go ahead and get started. Let's go over the rest of the cast. You got Ty Sheridan, who's from Ready Player One, X-Men, First Class. No, X-Men. He's Cyclops in the newer X-Men.
He's always the respectable guy, Ty Sheridan, in just about every movie that he's in.
Yeah, and I've always really liked him. I thought he was great in Ready Player One. But then you have the man with the best story.
He's a actor that I think will be forever trapped playing this age of a person, of a character.
How old is he?
He seems like he's been this age forever. And I think it's probably because Elijah Wood had this problem for a while too. I think it's actors who are more mature.
He is 25, so.
How old?
25.
He's 25. but
Yeah.
he seems like he's been 25 for about 20 years.
Yeah.
What was that first movie that he did that really broke in?
Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse was the first. Well, Mud was his first
No,
movie with Matthew McConaughey.
wasn't he in Joe also with
Yep.
Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, he was in Joe and Mud right after one
Yeah,
another.
and I think because those were two very mature films, and he played very mature characters in both, and I think they set a tone for him, and he's kind of been that character in just about every movie that he's done.
Mm-hmm.
He's been the respectable, mature, responsible guy in just about every movie, and he is in this too. And this movie is essentially Lord of the Rings with in space, and it follows, or it's just the future, and we fucked up the Earth because that's every future version of every Earth in every movie.
Isn't it sad there's no optimistic version of like everybody's given up on the optimistic Star Trek future?
Can we get a utopia for once?
Yeah, just once. It's all a fiction.
So we're sending we found a new home on another planet. We genetically engineer kids to make the 86-year journey to this new planet. Now they're not going. It's like they're not even really going to. The thing about this movie is the kids there who are on the way to this thing, this new planet, aren't even going to be the ones to experience it. It will be their kids who experience it, basically, because they won't survive the journey. Colin Farrell plays Richard, their guide, their guardian throughout this trip, and he treats them like they're his own kids. He's a very selfless, caring sort of person. Although I think in the beginning you're kind of meant to be kind of curious about that.
Yeah.
He
Whenever
does,
Colin Farrell's involved, you always get that feeling.
yeah, and it's Colin Farrell. So he also gives them this blue drink, which keeps them kind of docile. And once they find that out, some of the passengers refuse to take it, and it releases their emotions. Basically, they start having real, full emotions for the first time. Some of the kids go wild. Uh, they go wild, and they start feeling like real passion for women, for the other sex, and violent rages. And of course, when stuff like that happens, somebody starts to take control,
Yeah.
and battle lines are drawn. It's very Lord of the Flies, and of course, there's a tragedy that leaves the kids basically on their own. And at this point, yeah, battle lines are drawn. There's a side that lives in the moment basically, and then you got the other ones who are kind of the more respectable ones. So it's very Lord of the Flies. There's even a piggy moment in there.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of stuff going on here in this movie. But I like it because it is Lord of the Flies. I think that story. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, in school, they not only made us read The Lord of the Flies, which is one of my favorite books. I still have it on my shelf. Not only made us read it, they showed us the original movie, and then they showed us like the 1980s, 1990 remake version of it.
Mm-hmm.
They showed us every version of that movie possible. It's like we're gonna beat this into your head. This thing that's going on in this movie, this theme of, of humanity, like what happens with like man's natural urges and
Yeah, it's how we learn of our base primal instincts, right? And
yeah,
and why we need laws and why we need civilization.
yeah, it actually kind of makes sense nowadays too. There's a lot of toxic masculinity themes we're going through there too, and in this movie as well. If I have complaints about it, which I don't have too many complaints about it. I think it drags a little. I think it is needlessly toned down for a movie that is about uncontrollable urges.
Mm-hmm.
So the teasers really hint at like some of the salacious aspects of these kids running wild. I mean, you've got an entire ship full of hormonal youngsters and like
Imagine middle school with MDMA or Molly.
and like sex is very tame or only like alluded to maybe like in the movie, and you're like that feels counterintuitive considering what the movie's about.
Right.
And then I was thinking about Neil Berger, the director who makes this movie, and he makes these really um, he makes these really entertaining like mainstream movies. These movies that come close to crossing an edge but never really do. So he made like Limitless with Bradley Cooper. You know, where the movie where he got expanded brain capacity, whatever,
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like
The effects of that movie are still out there to this day. If you Google nootropics, there's actually millions of people that go out and buy all these little chemicals that they eat because they think it's going to give them those powers.
yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want that?
So it's like edgy, but like just edgy enough. And it's like so he also made like The Lucky Ones, which is one of my favorite military dramas. It's a really good, almost controversial film. He made the first Divergent movie, you know, which was
The Illusionist.
he made The Illusionist, which is pretty catchy. I kind of like that movie.
Yeah,
But
but it was the lesser, and that's the thing. I think that's the thing with Neil Berger is his stuff. He seems like an insanely talented director who's always being held back by something, whether that's a studio or a person or what, I don't know. But like you have The Illusionist and The Prestige came out. They were the Armageddon and Deep Impact of their time, what put The Prestige above was not just Christopher Nolan's name because he was in the middle of the Nolanverse Batman stuff, but also The Illusionist. It felt more exactly what you're saying about this movie, more pulled back, more tame, more more tame. We'll go with that.
Berger focuses really hard on being palatable, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
It's certainly a problem for this movie. Like I said, that felt very counterintuitive to me, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. But I love the performances. I think there's something about Colin Farrell that as as much as we can like him as a bad boy, I think he's better when he does sensitive. Um,
100%.
sensitive and vulnerable. I think Colin Farrell's even better. Like I love him in Bruges, but I really love him when he's like something where he's can show his sensitive side. I think he's really fantastic.
It's funny you use that example because that's one of the ones I go to as the reason I like him as a sensitive guy is in Bruges. It shows the splitting dynamic of him.
He does show that part too. He does show that part.
What's the movie where he's only shown? I can't remember. He's only shown in flashbacks, and he's the father of the main character. I think it was based on. Oh, was it Saving Mr. Banks? Saving Mr. Banks was one.
Yeah.
Where that was a really good one. And even in last year's The Gentleman, where he's more of a tough guy, but he's wants to protect these kids. And this seems like an extension of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
his character's really like that throughout this entire movie. He's just this paragon of not of virtue necessarily, but just
paternal care almost.
Yeah, he just really truly just cares about his kids. So it's kind of fucked up the way his story goes in this movie. He felt kind of bad about it. But yeah, I love the performance from him. I think Ty Sheridan is good, even though his character's sort of I don't know all the characters with the exception of Fionn Whitehead's who plays Zach, who is the bad guy of the movie basically. They're all kind of dialed down, and I think that's part of that is intentional. The rest of it, I think, is just the actors kind of underplaying it a little too much. But,
yeah, well, I mean, and you do have a cast. Now they are a young who's who of Hollywood at this point. What did you think of Lily Rose Depp? This is her first real, like mainstream big role, I would say. Unless we're gonna say yoga hosers, I don't think we would.
I'm not talking yoga hosers at all.
This is the progeny of Hollywood, Hollywood and modeling royalty. Johnny Depp and I forget her mom's name, but she was hot and she was a model. What did you think of her ability? Do you think this is something that we're going to see, or is this going to be, she's one and done?
I keep forgetting that she was in Tusk.
Mm-hmm.
She's fine. She's like the female Ty Sheridan in this movie. They're both very quiet and very reserved and kind of, dialed down. But I like I said, I think that's sort of a requirement of her role because I don't think her character ever gets off the blue like everybody else does.
Right.
So it makes sense for her to be a little bit more docile. But I liked her during the couple of moments where she had to show a little bit of fire. She gets you get a whole bunch of horny dudes running around the place, and there are only but so many hot women running around on the ship.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to try something shitty, and of course somebody does. I think she's good in those scenes. She's fine overall. Everybody's fine overall, I do kind of wish they had more. They could have given more time to, like I said, some of the other actors in it because it's so much talent in here. Just all around. There's kids who could be headlining their own movies who are in this movie and they don't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, your thoughts on the cast or my thoughts on the movie as a whole. I mean, I don't think it's as boring or as bad as some word is spreading about it. I think it's a totally fine streaming movie. If I didn't, if you don't have to pay for it, I think it's a totally fine way to spend 90. What was the runtime? It felt like about an hour and a half. Hour and 48 minutes. But it, they always talk about trimming movies down for the PG-13 rating. And maybe, I think you and I are on the same page about that, but I really felt it was more like, well, since whenever there's young casts, they always feel like they have to get that PG-13, and I totally get that. I totally get that rationale. And this did go to theaters, but I'm hoping we see less and less of that. And maybe I'm advocating for the corruption of the young, but as things go to streaming, rating goes out the window. You don't need it anymore. And so I'm hoping that they can. I'm not wanting to go overboard with it, but I want them to be truthful about it. And if you're going to talk about something that's primal, something that's the base human nature, and I think there could have been a little bit more allegory, might not be the right word, to things that we're seeing now. It felt very, if we continue down this path, this is the future we're going to see.
I think they were going for timeless.
Yeah.
I think they were going for timeless, so they didn't want to make it too much about right now.
Yeah, well, I can see that. I mean, the thing is, I don't really have much to say about it, good or bad. I thought everything was fine. Colin Farrell was the highlight for me. He's somebody I even when people were hating Colin Farrell, I've always had a spot for him. SWAT was one of my favorite action movies of the first half of the 2000s. He's just been really good, and as his career has transitioned from young heartthrob to older fatherly figure, I think he's made that voyage really admirably, and he's shown that he's more than a pretty face and an action star. He's actually a really good actor. So
what do you think was the movie that made that transition for him? There was a point where he was kind of, I would say,
In Bruges was a start. That's where he started showing more of who he is, other than just kicking ass.
Yeah, I guess. I always think about Phone Booth as like that moment where I was like, whatever happened to Colin Farrell? Why is he making Phone Booth?
Mm-hmm. Did you not like Phone Booth?
No, that's not the point. I mean, I like Phone Booth fine, but it was just but it was still kind of like Phone Booth.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was on a better trajectory than that, and then it's like all of a sudden he wasn't.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, but then there came a point where he kind of transitioned from being. Because I think early on he was action heartthrob guy,
Mm-hmm.
and then he went through a lull.
It's funny if you look at his filmography.
Here was that Total Recall remake.
That was just recently. That movie's not as bad as I remember. I watched it on Stars or something the other day. 2012. But if you look at his filmography, it's actually kind of funny.
It was 2012.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
That's almost 10 years ago. But he starts out really good with movies like Tigerland, which I liked a lot, Minority Report, Heart's War, and then he hits Phone Booth.
What year was Winter's whatever?
Winter's Tale, 2014.
That atrocious abortion of a film.
Yeah. But he goes good, solid quality movie. I'm not going to say hit. Solid quality movie to crappy movie, and then back and forth.
He doesn't have a lot of blockbusters, like blockbuster films. Like
no,
he doesn't have a lot of them. He's got a lot of quality performances and some decent films.
Yeah, I mean he's got Minority Report, Heart's War, Phone Booth, and then SWAT, which is probably one of his best stretches as an action hero. And then he hits Daredevil and drops out. But then he gets The Recruit, which wasn't received well, but I thought it was good. And then he gets Intermission, and then he gets Alexander and drops down again.
I remember Intermission because I bought it simply because he was in it.
Yeah. And then he gets The New World, which knocks him down even further. And then Ask the Dust, a little bit further. And Miami Vice, really. I mean, the late 2000s were a big problem for him, but In Bruges was really what started bringing him back.
What year was In Bruges?
2008.
Okay, yeah, I love the New World, so that's like the only Terrence Malick movie I like. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right, so that's
This has been Colin Farrell Hour on Cinema Royale.
I like
So yeah,
I like
on
the, I like
to
the way that Colin Farrell's career has evolved. I really do.
yeah,
And he's really good in Voyagers. To me, he's the best reason to see it. Or if you're a fan of Lord of the Flies, I really do think it's good to see that movie in another kind of from another angle,
yeah.
in another type of setting. If you love that story, I think it works. It's one of those stories that I think every generation gets their Lord of the Flies movie, and I think I'm not necessarily saying that this is it because it's it's a different kind of setting for it, but
It's an
if you like,
archetypal movie, right? I
yeah,
mean,
if you like Lord
and
of the Flies, you might want to give this movie a try.
it's not done often, and not as often as you'd think. It's and not as often as like a boy meets girl story. I mean, the last one I can really think of was like Battle Royale, maybe. That could qualify. I'm not, I don't even think that really qualifies, but yeah. So we, our quick part of the show just went 40 minutes almost. So we're gonna jump over to
We spent 20 minutes talking about WrestleMania. So
yeah, and then 20 minutes talking about Colin Farrell. So on to the big story of the week and some news that I'll let Travis get to that just dropped recently. But the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 4. I'm equal parts elated and depressed every Friday because we only get 6 episodes, and I've said it every single week, and I'll continue to say it every single week. This is my niche in the Marvel universe. This is the stuff that I love the most, and it just keeps getting better. John Walker really solidifies his villain status in this episode, I guess you could say. I mean,
does he?
That's not real. I mean, he does from a certain perspective.
Right.
But
a villain, to be a villain, everyone else has to see you as a villain too.
right,
Now, I imagine that the people in that particular part of the world who witnessed what he does at the end of this movie, they will see him as a villain.
yeah,
But will the American government see him as a villain?
the American people certainly will. I mean,
We don't know that either, because he was attacking a terrorist.
not all of American people, but
he was attacking a terrorist who had just killed people.
you
So
don't think? I think the Trumpers are the only one that's going to see something like that with blood. I mean, honestly, think about it. If an American soldier goes, if there's a picture of an American soldier standing over the body of a terrorist of undescribed ethnicity with blood dripping from his bayonet, people want the bad guys to go away, but they don't want to see it done. And as soon as they do, that
a very different outlook on America, and I think that's what this. I think that's what this they're going to explore a little bit, because I don't think he's going to be seen as a bad guy by the American people or the American government. And of course, there will be some, but there won't be all, and there will be a lot that you're going to tell me like. If that image came out, like a similar image like that came out right now, that every single one of those people who stormed the Capitol would be cheering his ass.
But that's a small percent. That's not a large percentage of the American population, I don't think.
Okay, this is why I say that we come at it from different perspectives, and why I think Marvel is going to explore that, because that's what this whole series has been about. That.
Well, here's the thing, though. There's people that storm the Capitol. This is my definition. Maybe that's where we change. The people who storm the Capitol are not Americans. They're traitors. They stormed the Capitol of our government and tried to overthrow our government for a single person, which is treason. They are not Americans. So that is a small percentage of the population. Most Americans, and I don't mean this in a degrading way, don't want to see the violence that needs to be done sometimes done. When you have that image of a bloody Captain America shield, that taints that image forever.
Right, like I said, it does to us, but I don't think it does for everyone.
Not for everyone. No, I'm certainly not saying that. I know there's probably, let's even put to 10 or 15% of the population will be like, yeah, kill those commie bastards or whatever. But
that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of that, because the people who think like that, a lot of them are in our government. So let's just put it this way. I'm not sold on the fact that he's necessarily going to be a bad guy after this, or at least we will see him as a bad guy, even if like others don't. And
right.
I think that he's going to be in that costume for a minute.
I don't know. I think, because my feeling is, I think they were very deliberate in where that happened and how it happened and everything about it. So we're talking about the end of this. We should probably give a little context. Spoilers. If you haven't seen this, you shouldn't be watching this episode. But
There's a lot that happens in this episode, yo. Okay, I've said this before. This episode, and I've said this before about this show. This episode may have had my favorite scene in a Marvel movie.
You know, I saw your post on that about the opening scene was the best Bucky ever, and so I'm waiting for this badass action scene.
It was the best Bucky since the best opening scene was the best Bucky scene since the Winter Soldier, and
Yeah.
I stick by that because this was the first time I've given a shit about Bucky since the Winter Soldier. It's not that I don't like the character, but simply being a brainwashed soldier who now needs to recover from that. That's not. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of meat to that to me. This was the first time where I actually felt something like emotional for him. Like, and they've never really given us a whole lot of reason to. This is the first time where I felt like, damn, Bucky's really going through some shit right here. This is like tremendous context for him right here. I like really felt something for him. And so the episode starts with us going back 6 years, God, 6 years, when he's being broken from the brainwashing, and he's being helped by the Dora Milaje member Ayo, who showed up at the end of the last episode. So they've kind of become friends. We didn't know that at all. They became kind of friends during that period. So when she shows up and is like, "Hey, give me motherfucking Zemo," and he's like, "I need him," there's that tension. You're like, okay, this tension isn't just Wakanda wants Zemo right now. There's like personal tension here too.
You think there's sexual tension there?
No, I didn't get that.
I kind of got the feeling.
It's because you think the Dora Milaje are sexy.
A woman that powerful, you're not going to think she's sexy?
Dora Milaje are sexy as hell.
Yeah, I mean, you got these powerful women there.
The Dora Milaje are part of the scene that I was thinking of, where I was like, this is the best scene, one of my favorite Marvel scenes ever.
Oh, yeah.
They're in it, and they show up later on, and Captain America, he's such a douche, and I was like, he's Captain America, and they're just like, who cares? And they Dora Milaje, for the Dora Milaje, we don't care. And he's like, you don't have any jurisdiction here, and they're like, sure, Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever they see fit, and there's like no contested.
The exact line was such a perfect comic book template line. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was like, the Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever the Dora Milaje find themselves to be, or something like that. It was so perfect.
And there's this one shot where Battlestar is like, he's over Cap's shoulder, and he kind of looks at it like you need to back off. Yeah, what the heck? He just kind of has this look on his face, and Cap, being the egotist and the jerk that he is, takes it too far.
Can we say Walker? I don't want to say Cap's being an egotist.
His hands on a Dora Milaje. That is that is about as forbidden as it gets. He puts his hands on a Dora Milaje, and he gets his ass whipped so bad. We've talked about the disintegration of John Walker, and what's amazing to me, one of the things that I loved about this series so far, and I actually think I like this better than WandaVision, even though I love WandaVision.
The character development they're doing here, with the breadth of the characters and the development they're getting in these small pieces. I mean, the Dora Milaje fight, John Walker's development has been in short bursts, but they do it so well where you have Cap, and he's already expressed how he needs to live up to this, and he gets his ass whooped, and he just says, they weren't even super soldiers, which leads perfectly to him running into the serum later and developing why he would do that.
Right. We talked about this when Cap first showed up in that very first episode. You and I both talked about it, and I was like, well, we were both like, well, how is he going to get to where we think he's going to go? And I was like, oh, there will be a series of disrespects that will send him down that path. And I remember saying that, and I was like, there will be a series of disrespectful moments that will send him down this rabbit hole. And that's certain of what's happened. Like every episode, like he has met disrespect everywhere he's gone. Even when he's just trying to do good, he's met disrespect the entire way. Right. And this was like the humiliation, the final humiliation for him. Basically, is getting his ass whipped by these women who just show up out of nowhere. He doesn't really respect their authority either. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't respect their personal boundaries either. He goes in there thinking he's the man. And he gets his ass whipped, and he doesn't just get his ass whipped. He gets his ass whipped in humiliating fashion.
Yeah, but at least he wasn't castrated like Bucky was.
He gets trapped by his own shield, Stone Shield gets stuck. And then after the fight is over, after he's been thoroughly beaten and embarrassed, one of the Dormelage just kicks the shield up into her arm and is like, I can wield the shield just as well as you. You are not special.
Even better almost, because she did a Steve Rogers moment with that.
Steve Rogers did total Steve Rogers. It was like the final exclamation point on his humiliation. And it was so perfect. And I was like, wow.
But at least he wasn't castrated like Bucky. I mean, the sense of treachery and betrayal in his eyes when Io comes up and she's like, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, and then his arm falls off. And he's just like, oh.
that was a great moment. That it seems so simple and obvious.
Yeah.
But you don't think you never would have thought about it, and then it's like, oh, that's great.
And then Sam at the end, did you know they could do that? Nope. Nope, sure didn't. And Wakandans are smart. They're not going to give you something without a way to get around it.
It makes you wonder what else the Wakandans could do. Like, could they turn him back into the Winter Soldier if they wanted to?
Oh, I think to deconstruct something like that, you have to know to construct it in the first place. So I think, honestly, in the Marvel Universe, I don't think there's a single thing that Wakandans can't do. I think that's the amazing thing about
the comics.
Yeah, that's the draw of Wakanda.
They're like the Wakandans are like the nation version of Batman. Like the joke for Batman is Batman plus time equals invincibility. Basically, if you give Batman enough time, he will figure out how to beat anyone and anything. And that's kind of like how Wakanda is. They seem to have something for everything, no matter what the situation is.
I always think of Wakanda like Tony Stark to the world is this amazing genius, and Tony Stark and Wakanda might get into the advanced placement classes at Wakanda High School.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when you have Shuri come up, who's 16, 17 years old or whatever in the movies, and she's basically deconstructing what took Bruce Banner and Tony Stark to make over years in a few hours with Vision. I mean, that settles it down. But
Tony Stark and the people of Wakanda is Tony Stark took his brains and basically he focused it on weapons and defense.
Mm-hmm.
Wakandans took their brains. They're like weapons, defense, nation building, all sorts of different things, like everything.
Right. Well, because you have 500 Tony Starks in Wakanda.
Right. so like, that's why they're different than Tony Stark. It's just they're just thinking on a wider level than he is.
So back to Walker. So there's a fight where you kind of get the feeling throughout that something really bad's going to happen, and during a fight with the Flag Smashers, Carly Morgenthau, the Flag Smashers lead, our second tier villain. Yeah. There's tons of character development in this.
She has with Sam.
Right. Yeah. And so she punches Battlestar, who hits a column and is dead. He's just gone. And that's what throws John Walker over the edge. He chases, as you can see right above us right now is the final scene. He chases one of the Flag Smashers out and just proceeds to murder him with the shield in front of full view of the public. I almost thought, I was not disappointed. I think the way they handled it was good because it showed more rage. But when he first cocked back with the shield, I would have put money on that he was going to just decapitate the dude and you see a head rolling down the stairs in front of everybody. Yeah. But he doesn't.
You were like, oh yeah, this is still on Disney. So
yeah, it's still Disney. But what he does is it's less gruesome, but no less brutal.
And the Snyder cut version of this is head rolling down the steps.
Yeah, and when Bucky's arm falls off, it's got a middle finger sticking up. But he does that, hits him, and then he stands back, and the camera pulls back, and what you get is the most proper comic book panel that you'll ever get in a DC in a Marvel Disney Plus show that I can think of, where it's a long shot on John Walker standing, zoom up to him in the shield, and the bottom of the shield's covered in blood with people all standing around him horrified. And it's just a moment that says that really, if you had any doubts before as to that Steve Rogers was special, or that this guy couldn't fill Steve Rogers' shoes, that's where you know, because it's not what you can do, it's what you stop yourself from doing that makes you a hero.
Imagine how this scene would have played out on the big screen in a movie. Like if you were in a crowd of people who never knew this scene was coming, and this scene played in the middle of the movie, you'd be like, oh.
Pin drops. Just like the same thing with his introduction. Like if that was the final scene in Endgame, where here's the new Cap, people would have been screaming and yelling and throwing things at the screen. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so John Walker's it's be really and of course one thing I've seen about these Disney Plus shows is they are bastards about where they stop episodes. They find the most frustrating place to stop the episode and stop it. So that Cap holding the bloody shield is the final shot of the episode. And we're missing a bunch of stuff throughout. One of the things I really want to touch on that we almost didn't is, the character development I'm talking about. I have been surprised the most by Zemo's development. I like Zemo. I kind of like him on the team. I mean, are you falling somewhere in that line or?
Zemo's fantastic.
Yeah.
But Zemo's fantastic because he's the pest in the group. He's kind of like the Loki in the group.
Yeah.
When Loki is like forced to hang around like the Avengers types.
Yeah.
He's there helping, but he's kind of.
But more so, like you
kind of
feel for him.
Zemo is. I don't know if I feel for Zemo.
I think he's more likable than Loki. Loki's more funny, but Zemo's more like everyday likable. Like he's so blunt with what he says and so calm with everything. And so, like, well, what you expected me to do it, didn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, Zemo is fantastic here, and the things that he says aren't necessarily wrong. In fact, everything he said has turned out to be true for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You give people the super soldier serum, and for the most part, they're supremacists just by the nature of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And John Walker is like perfect proof of that. He said there's never been another Steve Rogers, is there? And then, no, there hasn't. And John Walker certainly isn't it. You see what he did when he took some super soldier serum. He went over the edge.
Yeah.
Probably because he felt like he was entitled to do it. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of the best Marvel heroes, the best heroes period are ones who operate in the shade of gray, and there's shades of gray everywhere. You see a lot of that in the conversation between Sam and Carly.
Mm-hmm.
Carly, leader of the Flag Smashers, in which they basically have the same viewpoint. I mean, they agree on everything with the exception of tactics.
Right.
Sam doesn't like the fact that she's killing people. She's being acting like a terrorist. But for the most part, they agree. They agree that these people need help, and stuff like that. He wants in a better circumstance, they would be working together. And there's a scene where one of the Flag Smashers is like talking to Carl, and he's like, "I never believed anybody else could be Captain America until I met you." Under different circumstances, she would be a great Captain America because
Mm-hmm.
she has the right idea, just not the right way of pulling it off. And she's like this she's like running in parallel with John Walker, who I think has good intentions, but is awful. And
yeah.
And he's just not. And it starts to look. When it comes to being somebody like Captain America, you have to be a symbol. The difference between Carly and John Walker is that I think people want to follow her. I think she's a natural leader, even if her tactics are wrong. He's not a leader. He might be a soldier. He's not a leader.
The only thing keeping Carly from being a perfect Captain America, and it's Cap's famous quote that was said by Sharon Carter in Civil War at Peggy's funeral is
a little bit of in this episode. I know you're upset about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, any Emily Van Camp is fine for me, but it's the standing up for your values no matter what everybody says around you. Plant yourself in the river of truth and all that. Look it up if you don't know it. I won't say the whole thing, but because Carly had the full right idea. She didn't want to blow up that hospital. Her guy that ended up getting killed by John Walker did, and she didn't have the strength to say no. To say this isn't right. Let's not do this. There's another way. So, she's learning on the way there, but she doesn't have it yet, and that's what's going to keep her from being there. I thought with only 2 episodes left, I thought the person at the other end of that shield at the end of the episode was going to be Carly. Kind of surprised it wasn't, but since it's not, I'm wondering if she's one of the people that stays and translates to other films, other mediums.
She is just about the right age to be a young Avenger.
Yep. So we're at 54 minutes. There was a very important post you put up earlier that I know we got to talk about a little bit.
The abbreviated episode we've done. So
I got a text from my wife saying short episode, huh?
The showrunner Marcus Spellman has been talking about the upcoming episodes, and he said he's been promising that episode 5 is going to be like huge, a big one. Apparently, something in it is going to make us cry, which makes me think that somebody's going to die. So we'll see what happens. I got my eye on you, Sharon Carter.
Come on, man.
But he also promised that there's going to be a big cameo in episode 5, and this won't be like the WandaVision cameo that never happened. This won't be that. There's no tricks in this one, I don't think. So it's gonna be a big cameo, and this is going to be a cameo of a character that has never been in the MCU before, that we've not seen before, and played by a well-known actor. So,
So all that's a direct quote. None of that was like translated.
well, I mean, it's you know, it's paraphrased, of course. I could go and pick it, pull it up.
Well, I mean, what I mean is he didn't say it wasn't like a full-on Paul Bettany. Like this is somebody that you've.
So yeah, so that's what we've got. So that's what we've got. Ideas? It's
I
not.
mean,
It can't be somebody we've seen before, so it's not the people we would think. So it's not going to be Doctor Strange.
did they say seen before in the MCU or seen before? Period.
His character has never been in the MCU, so it's not Doctor Strange. It doesn't mean he's not going to be Black Widow or Hawkeye or
I
something.
mean, this drives me more towards what we were talking about a week or two ago when we, after the Madripoor episode, is how much of a mindfuck would it be if we all expected a mutant to show up in WandaVision because of the content there, but as soon as they go to Madripoor, you have to, that the mutant haven of the comic books, you kind of have to go that way. Like, who's going to show up and be the power broker? Is it going to be Magneto? Is it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd say Madripoor is like a mutant haven. It's really only like a mutant haven for Wolverine. But if Wolverine showed up, okay, that'd be one thing. I'd be like, what? But
could they keep something like that completely under wraps?
If they went to Genosha, that'd be like, holy fuck. That'd be like,
okay, yeah.
But I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about it. I mean, in my post about it, I said, you're all thinking Wolverine because we were just in Madripoor, but it's probably not going to be him. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
They're ballsy to make these kind of because when you make a statement like that with comic book fans, especially as fervent as MCU fans, you really need to deliver on it, or else you're going to get. I'm surprised there wasn't more backlash against Paul Bettany for his whole cameo thing that he was talking about.
He felt bad about it. Remember the post?
Yeah, there was a lot, but I'm surprised there wasn't more because people, I'm surprised. People get death threats. I mean, Wyatt Russell's getting death threats about being John Walker. So, people way toxic when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, people are dumb.
Yeah. That's the best way to put it. But
do you have any guesses?
I really don't. I mean, I could start listing names, but it wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't even have any basis for them. I mean,
see, the thing is,
I honestly really don't think it'll be a mutant.
You have to live up to it. So it can't.
Yeah.
It can't be Sasquatch from Alpha Flight.
Right.
Even though honestly, I'd probably go wild if Sasquatch from Alpha Flight showed up. But 99% of people have no idea who that is. So,
you and the Canadians.
But so I was like, I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, who's another patriotic hero that could show up?
Yeah.
So my mind turns to like Captain Britain.
That would be awesome.
Who was a character that there have been rumors about getting his own show or getting a Marvel movie at some point. And I'm like, Captain Britain is a patriotic character, and I'm like,
Okay, let me ask you this. No, because we've seen Iron Patriot before.
Jack or something like that,
Yeah. Or we could find out that no, because we've seen him before at this point. But Patriot could show up in costume, like the start of Isaiah Washington's. I would say Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley.
We've already seen the actor though.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So it can't be him.
It can't be him. So I don't know.
I know people are talking about possibly the new Black Panther, but there's no way they release that this way.
Yeah, the problem. Yeah, I mean, but you've been to Wakanda and you've got Wakandans fully mixed into the story now.
Yeah.
So you're like, it would make sense for a Wakandan to show up, and I'm surprised. Like, Shuri hasn't showed up actually, but or maybe she will. Who knows? There's still time. But I don't know. Maybe if it is I mean, the thing is though, I feel like they wouldn't want to do anything that would tease anything about Black Panther 2.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the most we'll get is the Wakandans that we've seen so far. I mean, so it's probably not the Power Broker because we know the Power Broker's there, so that's not really a surprise. The actor might be. Union Jack would be pretty cool.
That's what I was like. Union Jack, Captain Britain.
Yeah.
You know what?
I don't.
Watch it be the fucking Power Broker, and I'll just be mad because it might be the Power Broker. It might actually be the Power Broker. And
but they've already said the Power Broker's name, so that wouldn't really be a surprise. Just the actor playing him will be.
He hasn't shown up though.
Yeah, that's true.
Showing up, we don't know who's playing him. It could be somebody tight playing him, and we don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like if it was somebody awesome, I'd feel that it was a waste because there's so many upcoming new characters that are going to be debuted. That's what I always think of when you have somebody really cool that makes like a cameo as an actual. I'm trying to think of a example like.
It'll be such a gigantic letdown if it's the Power.
Yeah, let's say the person that played the head of Sword.
By Tom Cruise, the Power Broker being that cameo would be a letdown.
Yeah. But as long as it's somebody that wouldn't be better used as a larger name, But we will have that and more for you next week.
We'll know in a week.
And then that's the penultimate episode. So we've only got 2 weeks left of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which should roll us pretty near Black Widow. I'm about a month away from Black Widow, and I think the same for Loki, yeah? So plenty more Marvel to come. But until then, make sure to find out all of this stuff on our website, punchdrunkcritics.com. On Twitter, the site is @PDCMovies. Travis is @PunchyCritic, and I am @PunchDrunkJohn. Twitch @cinematic_enforcer. Make sure to go and subscribe to Travis's channel if he hasn't started posting yet. We fixed the technical issues. Are you back up?
I haven't done it yet. I will soon, though.
Okay. Any tips and questions? And
trying to figure out what I want to play.
Right. We are still looking for writers, so info@punchdrunkcritics.com. Send us an email if you have any tips, anything that you want to talk to us about at all. We are always open for it. Until next week, when we find out who this mysterious character is, we're the Punch Drunk Critics. This has been Cinema Royale. I'm John.
I'm Travis.
And we're out.
Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.